a lot of young women dream of being featured on Vogue. For me to be given this opportunity is incredibly exciting.
Look at the photograph. A young woman in an oversized polo Ralph Lauren denim shirt, a raffia hat tilted against the Madrid light, the photographer Miguel Reveriego working the frame. Her name is Alexandra Eala. She is 20 years old, she is from the Philippines, and she is on the digital cover of Town & Country magazine. Town & Country was founded in 1846. That is 180 years of covers. 180 years of debutantes, of duchesses, of heiresses, of the kind of American and European society the magazine was built to chronicle. 180 years of an editorial calendar that did not, until last August, place a tennis player on a digital cover. And when it finally did, it did not choose a Grand Slam champion. It did not choose a top 10 star. It chose a Filipina ranked outside the top 50 who had not yet won a WTA title, who had not yet made a Slam quarterfinal. That is the object at the center of today's story. A photograph, a masthead, a bet. Here is what you need to know to understand why that bet matters. Town & Country is a Hearst flagship. It is not a sports magazine. It covers royals, fashion, philanthropy, the rooms most readers never enter. So when it commissions a digital cover, the choice is editorial taste-making, not sports journalism. The cover in question ran on August 19, 2025, almost 10 months before the video you are watching now. And in those 10 months, the woman in that polo Ralph Lauren shirt reached the round of 16 at Indian Wells, made a grass court final at Eastbourne, won her first WTA title at the Birmingham Open on June 7, and climbed to a career-high WTA ranking of number 33 as of June 8, 2026. The cover did not follow the breakthrough. The cover came first. So the honest question, the one a thoughtful tennis fan would ask before clicking on a video like this, is whether the magazine got ahead of itself. In August 2025, Alex Eala was a name working tennis people knew, and most of the magazine's own readership did not. She had built a junior resume. She had trained at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca. She had a spring run earlier in 2025 that put her on a few radars. But the standard playbook for a luxury or society cover when it features a tennis player at all is to wait. You wait for the slam. You wait for the moment the player has done something that justifies the gloss. Sloane Stephens got her Vogue cover after the 2017 US Open. Coco Gauff's lifestyle covers followed her Slam final breakthrough. Naomi Osaka's covers came after Slam titles, not before. That is the convention, and it exists because magazines do not like being wrong in public. A cover is a long lead, an expense shoot, a year of archive. If the subject does not deliver, the cover ages badly. So what was Town & Country doing in August 2025, putting a player ranked in the 50s on the masthead of a 180-year-old society publication? The tension inside today's story sits there. Is it too early? Was it a Hearst editor reading the tea leaves better than the tour itself? Or was it a magazine deciding that a cover did not have to follow stardom, that it could help define what stardom looks like in the first place? Start with the simplest fact. The cover existed before the resume justified it. On the day of publication, Eala had no WTA title, no Slam quarterfinal, and a ranking that floated somewhere in the 50s. TNC was not buying a finished product. It was buying potential, and it was telling its readership, society, fashion, the lifestyle audience, that this was a face worth knowing. That is point one. Point two is the writer's own framing, because this is where today's story gets a fact most viewers will not have seen. The article was written by Emily Burrick, the magazine's deputy digital editor. On the day the cover dropped, Burak posted on Instagram that it was a dream to write my second digital cover story for Town & Country and have it be our first tennis digital cover. Her words, attributed, dated August 19, 2025. Inside the building, this was understood as a category-opening decision, not a one-off feature, a first. Then the 10 months happened, and this is where the cover begins to read differently. On March 9, 2026, Alexandra Eala walked onto a stadium court at Indian Wells and reached the round of 16, the first Filipina ever to do it at that tournament. Town & Country ran a follow-up piece. The magazine had not just placed its bet and walked away, it kept investing in the story. That is the second cluster of evidence. The magazine doubled down and the player gave it reason to. Pause here for a moment, because the rhythm of this story matters. A cover is a single image. A career is hundreds of matches, thousands of practice hours, a draw sheet that does not care about magazine layouts. What Town & Country did in August 2025 was freeze one frame and say, this one. 10 months that followed were Eala's job to make that frame look earned. And the next piece of evidence is the moment the frame got earned. On June 7, 2026, on the grass courts of Edgbaston Priory, Alexandra Eala won the Birmingham Open. She dropped the first set to Nicola Bartunkova. She came back to win the title. It was her first career WTA singles title and her first on grass, a surface she had never won on at the tour level. The ranking moved to number 33. The trophy went into her hands. And somewhere in the archive at Hearst, a cover from 10 months earlier began to read less like a gamble and more like a forecast. That is the climax adjacent evidence point, the result that made the cover legible as prophecy. And here is the line that hits differently now. Inside Burak's cover story from August 2025, Alexandra Eala said this: "The only thing I can give back to my country is to inspire." Read in August 2025, that sentence is aspiration. It is a 20-year-old talking about what she hopes to mean. Read now, after the Indian Wells run, after the Eastbourne final, after the Birmingham Trophy, with Filipino fans flooding her Instagram and Filipino media tracking every round, that same sentence reads as a contract being honored. The cover did not just place her in the room. It captured her saying out loud what she intended to do, and then she went and did a measurable portion of it. That is the emotional pivot of today's story. The sentence has not changed. Everything around it has. And then, 3 days after Birmingham, the story honest checked itself. On June 10, at the Queen's Club Championships in London, Eala lost to the American Eva Jovic 2-6, 2-6 in the round of 16. A 6-match grass court winning streak ended. The cover did not protect her from a bad afternoon, which brings us to the final evidence point, the one that actually explains why this story matters as a cultural moment rather than a sports moment. Pair the timing to the players the lifestyle press normally elevates. Sloane Stephens, Vogue, after a U.S. Open title. Coco Gauff, Vogue and GQ, after a slam final breakthrough. Naomi Osaka, multiple covers, all of them following major hardware. The convention is clear. The lifestyle cover is a victory lap. What Town & Country did with Alexandra Eala was different in a specific, documentable way. It ran the cover before any of those milestones existed. That is not a magazine's following sports stardom. That is a magazine helping decide what stardom is going to look like in this generation of tennis. And that distinction is the cultural story. Authority on what was happening inside that decision belongs to Emily Burak. She is the deputy digital editor at Town & Country. She wrote the piece, and she has on her own public Instagram, dated August 19, 2025, described the cover in her own words as the magazine's first tennis digital cover. That attribution matters. It is not a corporate press release. It is the writer telling her own followers what she just did. The line is direct. A dream to write my second digital cover story for Town & Country and have it be our first tennis digital cover. That is the inside the building voice on this story, and it is the cleanest, most sourced statement available about what the cover represented to the people who made it. The corroborating voice, from the playing side, belongs to Barbora Krejcikova. After facing Eala at Wimbledon in 2025, the 2024 Wimbledon champion said this: "She was smashing the ball. She was cleaning the lines. Wow, it's the next generation coming up. She's going to be really good in a couple of years." A slam champion on the record, saying out loud that the player on the Town & Country cover was the next generation. Those two voices, Burak from the editorial side, Krejcikova from the locker room side, line up the same way. The magazine and the Wimbledon champion saw the same thing at roughly the same time. Step back from the cover for a moment and look at the wider editorial map Town & Country has been drawing. The magazine ran a feature on Iga Swiatek in 2024. It covered Mira Andreeva's French Open run in 2026. It returned to Eala for the Indian Wells follow-up in March. Inside one of America's oldest society publications, a tennis editorial line has formed, and Alex Eala is not standing at the back of it. She is one of the names defining it. That is the room she has entered. For Filipino tennis, there is no comparable precedent. No Filipino tennis player, on the men's or women's side, previously held a digital cover at this tier of American luxury media. The Filipino press, ABS-CBN, GMA, Rappler, The Inquirer covered the cover, not as a sports story, but as a cultural milestone, which is the correct framing. A society magazine in New York chose a Filipina to introduce to its readership. The reach of that choice extends past the WTA rankings page and into a much broader conversation about who gets to be visible, and where and when. The fan response on Eala's own Instagram post about the cover ran past 52,000 likes. Comments from kababayan around the world saying some version of the same thing, that seeing her there in that frame, on that masthead, mattered in a way the scoreboard alone cannot measure. That is the fan reading, and it is consistent with what the magazine itself appears to have understood. This was never only about a tennis player. And then there is the part of the story that does not bend toward triumph. On June 10, 4 days before this video, Alex Eala walked onto a Queen's Club court, coming off the best week of her career, and lost in straight sets, 2-6, 2-6 to Eva Jovic. The grass streak that had carried her through Birmingham ended in roughly an hour. There is no on-record reaction quote from Eala about the match that fits the verification standard of this script, so there will not be one fabricated here. What there is the score. The score says the cover does not protect her. The score says the promise is not finished. The cover was not a coronation. It was an introduction, and an introduction is a beginning, not a destination. Next week, she is reportedly entered at Bad Homburg. The week after, Wimbledon begins, and if she holds her ranking, she will be seated at a Grand Slam for the first time in her career. The runway is open. The work continues. So look at the photograph one more time. A young woman in a Polo Ralph Lauren shirt, a raffia hat, a Madrid afternoon, the masthead of a 180-year-old American Society magazine above her head. 180 years of covers. One Filipina. The room she is in now is not a locker room, and it is not a press conference. It is an editorial calendar at Hearst, a digital cover archive that until last August had never run a tennis player at this tier, and a tennis conversation that now includes her name next to Iga Swiatek and Mira Andreeva and Coco Gauff. Names, town, and country as covered. In some form, across the same 18 months, it covered her. The magazine's own writer called it their first tennis digital cover. The 2024 Wimbledon champion called her the next generation. And the line Alex Eala gave Emily Burrick last August. The only thing I can give back to my country is to inspire. Reads now, after Indian Wells and Eastbourne and Birmingham, like a sentence she has begun to keep her word on. The Queen's Club loss is real, the work is unfinished, but the room she is in now is a room very few players her age have ever stood inside, and almost none of them stood inside it before the trophies arrived. Subscribe if you want to follow what happens next, because Bad Homburg is next week, Wimbledon is the week after, and the cover that ran last August has, for the first time in 10 months, started to look less like a forecast and more like a record.